Hi, and welcome back to Museum at Home. Now today we are travelling all the way back to Bronze Age Britain. We're talking about a time 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, an ancient and a mysterious time when life was very different. But we can still find traces of this time in prehistoric objects, in ancient graves, and even in the landscape itself. Somewhere we can come very close to Bronze Age Britain is in a place called Uffington in Oxfordshire. We can find evidence of the Bronze Age there in the form of an incredible figure, a huge shape that was chalked into the hillside around 3,000 years ago, and which we can still see today. Now let's take a closer look at this amazing piece of art and find out a bit more about what it can tell us about the Bronze Age in Britain. Take a look at this image. It is an aerial photograph, which means it was taken from above, either by a drone or a light aircraft. What can you see? What does it show us? Now, although this isn't an object in a museum or an artefact which we can see in a collection, this is something outside, it's too big to fit in anywhere, we can still use the same question words to help us to think about what we are seeing. So what questions can we ask? Well, what? What is this shape? What features can we see? What does it look like? And what does it remind us of? What is it made out of? Who? Who might have made this? Who would have visited it? Where? Where is the site? What type of land? What places is it close to? What things are nearby? How? How was it made? How was it used? And how do we protect it now? And why? Why was it made? Why was it put there in this precise spot? So let's think through some of these questions. What can you see? What shape? Look very carefully. Can you make out some very narrow legs? You can see two thicker legs at the back and two thinner ones at the front. And you might be able to spot a long, graceful neck and a head. How would you describe the head? Is it flat or is it pointed? Well, I'd say that it is a pointed head, a long face. So what kind of animal could this be? Now, it isn't absolutely obvious and different people have made different guesses, but most historians tend to agree that this is a horse. And what kind of position is it in? What does it seem to be doing? Is it standing? Is it still? Or is it active? Is it moving? I think that it seems to be a horse leaping with legs stretched apart to help it to jump. But what is this horse made out of? Well, it is a chalk figure visible for miles and miles around. It has been carved into the hillside itself, and the chalk beneath the grass has been exposed. The chalk is compacted together and fits into the ridge, which gives this horse its really strong and clear outline. And every year, volunteers come to the site to re-chalk bits of the horse so that it always looks as striking and dramatic as it did when it was first designed thousands of years ago. But why create an enormous chalk horse on the side of a hill? What does it mean? And what was its use for the Bronze Age inhabitants of this area? Well, there isn't a definite answer. Archaeologists and historians can make guesses, and they can make really good guesses, and there are just some things though that we can't say for sure. We can't even say exactly how old the white horse is, although we can say it is probably at least 3,000 years old. But it's difficult to be more specific than that. But if we look at the land around the white horse, then perhaps we can find some more clues as to why it was created. Now take a look at this picture, which shows the whole hill, the whole of White Horse Hill. At the top of the hill is an Iron Age hill fort, a defensive structure or a castle that looks out over the countryside around. Now there isn't much left of the castle itself, it's really just within the ground, but it used to be there. Perhaps the horse could be connected in some way to the fort and its makers, as a symbol maybe. Horses have been important animals throughout history, and in the Bronze Age would have been used to pull carts and ride into battle. Horses came to be seen as prized possessions and symbols of status, symbols of importance. The Celts, a people who settled in Britain around the time of the creation of this white horse figure, or maybe just after, well, they saw the horse as a protector. Perhaps this is why such a large horse figure has been carved into the hillside. And horses were even linked to Celtic gods. Epona was a goddess who cared specifically for horses and donkeys. Celtic stories were absolutely full of horses, like the tale of Rhiannon, a beautiful and mysterious figure who rode a white horse, and Enmar, a horse with a flowing mane who was always associated with a Celtic sea god. Some historians even wonder whether the white horse on the hill could possibly be connected to the idea of the sun, because in some ancient tales from ancient cultures, the sun was depicted as moving across the sky, being drawn by a horse-drawn chariot. So maybe that's another reason for our white horse in Uffington. So although we can't say for certain why this horse was created, there are loads of interesting possibilities that we could explore. And beneath the white horse lies another hill which is connected with lots of interesting legends and stories. Dragon Hill is a small hill with a flat top. It looks just like it has been plonked onto the landscape. But with a name like Dragon Hill, there must be a story connected there somewhere, surely. Legend has it that Dragon Hill is the space that marks where St. George, the patron saint of England, famously killed a dragon that had been terrorising the local people. Other stories suggest something different. They suggest that this hill, Dragon Hill, is the burial place of Uther Pendragon, the legendary father of King Arthur. Now, of course, these stories are just that, they're stories. But stories are an important part of our history, and I think that they're just as interesting in a different way as objects and artefacts. So, what can we learn about the Bronze Age from the white horse? Well, let's have a think. Historians have to fill in lots of the gaps themselves. We know that there aren't all the answers that we want, but we can say for certain that this was an important area for Bronze Age people. It was a defensive spot. We know that because we know that there was an Iron Age hill fort at the top, a perfect position for a castle on the top of a hill that overlooks vast land and countryside. It might have been a religious spot. Horses were important creatures to the Celts, after all, and there are lots of British myths connected with that part of the land. It might have a totally different meaning that we don't know yet, that we haven't quite found. Who knows? That's what makes the white horse such an interesting thing to look at, because we don't have all the answers just yet. Now, if you have enjoyed this topic of the Bronze Age, then do head to the resource pack for some activities based on Bronze Age Britain. And you can find that by clicking on the link in this YouTube video, or you can go to the Museum at Home website. And next time, join me as we explore the world of the Victorian scientist Charles Darwin. So, see you next time for another Museum at Home.